When you think of childhood sexual abuse, you automatically think of girls as victims, right? And also you think of males as the perpetrators. But guess what? The media has only told us half the story about girls. Luckily, many years of research tell us a very different story. An example is a CDC study in 2005 which showed that 1 in 6 boys experienced unwanted sexual contact by the time they reached the age of 18. That's over 12 million boys in the United States. The CDC study we're talking about also kept track of the sex of the perpetrator. For many years, the assumption has been that the perpetrators of sexual abuse of boys are primarily men. This research and other recent studies challenged that assumption. This study found that of the boys who were abused, nearly 40% of the abusers were female. That's about half, right? Why do we not see headlines that half of those who sexually abuse boys are women? Why? The study also examined the life impact of their childhood sexual abuse on both boys and girls. It found that they were both negatively impacted in a very similar manner. This also challenges some of the old assumptions that it was the girls who were abused that faced the greatest hardships, trauma, and negative life impact due to their abuse. This study says, no, that's far from the truth. They conclude that both boys and girls are impacted, and the impact is very similar for both. The idea of 1 in 6 boys having been sexually abused as children is not limited to this CDC study, nor is it new. There are a number of other studies that have come to similar conclusions. The range seems to be between 14 and 18% for the boys. We knew even in the 1980s that boys comprised a sizable number of those children who experienced sexual abuse. The classic and best-selling handbook for female survivors of childhood sexual abuse, The Courage to Heal, estimated that 1 in 7 boys also faced the trauma of sexual abuse as children. This book, like so many other media sources, basically ignored the millions of abused boys and focused almost totally on female victims. The research has brought the idea of 1 in 6 into the public domain. There's now a website, 1in6.org, that offers information specifically for boys and men on childhood sexual abuse. It provides a place for men's stories about their abuse, has information for the men, their families, therapists, and professionals. It's well worth a look. I think it's a breath of fresh air, and make sure to check it out. There's a link in the low bar. I'm grateful to these researchers for their even-handed examination of this problem and their ability to ignore the status quo politically correct media version that focuses on girls who are victims and ignores the hardships and needs of boys. They deserve congratulations. I do, however, have one bone to pick with them. It has to do with one of the tables of data they offer in their article. Table 2 on page 433. Have a look. Look at the numbers for the least intrusive sexual abuse. This is the category that one would assume would be the largest for both boys and girls, with declining numbers to follow. But what you find is that 13.2% of the boys experienced this lowest level of abuse, and 22.5% of the girls experienced this lower level of abuse. Still not a problem, but obviously the girls experienced much more of the least intrusive type of abuse. But look what happens with the more severe abuse. In the next category, forced to touch an adult, the boys outnumber the girls 8.1% to 7.9%. Then in the next level of abuse of attempted intercourse, the boys are 7.3% and the girls 8.6%. But it's the last, most abusive category that got me wide-eyed. In this category of completed intercourse, the boys outnumber the girls 6.7% to 5.6%. This seems to say that more boys than girls were raped as children. That is a notable statistic. My beef with the researchers is they didn't highlight this difference and question the reasons for such a startling stat. The least they could do would be to get a discussion going about the reasons that boys outnumber girls in the most intrusive category. This research offers us a very different perspective from what we're used to hearing from the media. It tells us that the popular percentages of 1 in 6 boys and 1 in 4 girls may be a bit misleading. These numbers may be true for the least intrusive forms of childhood sexual abuse, but when you examine only the more intrusive abuse, the numbers change. Now it's more like 1 in 14 for both boys and girls. boys and girls are equally likely to face the more intrusive sexual abuse. This is not what the media has been telling us for 50 years. We've gotten a steady diet of abuse being primarily about girls. Only telling half the story repeatedly has left most of us severely misinformed. Imagine if the media bias was the opposite. Here's what a headline might look like. Or maybe like this. These headlines show what a biased media might do if they were only concerned about the needs and hardships of boys and men. They don't lie, they simply only tell half the story. This engenders a very false image in the minds of their readers. Just imagine what you would believe after seeing this sort of headline for 50 years. We've all been duped. Most people believe that women and girls have a corner on the market of hardship and discrimination. This is a completely false message, as can be seen by the research we've been discussing. We need a media that shows compassion and interest in the needs and hardships of both boys and girls, not just girls. This CDC research study is a good example of the beginnings of seeing both sides. And let's not forget, men are good.